if you're, if you're feeling down, no matter what, physical activity will help you feel stronger. And it's also, your physical health is also going to shape your mental health. It buffers us, it protects us, it enables us to make good decisions. Number one, be accountable. I think that idea of doing something with a friend is invaluable. So you just sort of have to show up, and even if you're guilted into it, then you can often develop that intrinsic motivation afterwards.
So just for people who don't know, just introduce yourself and what you do.
I'm Dr. Samantha Boardman. I am a psychiatrist who is also trained in positive psychology. And so I spent many, many years focusing on what was wrong with people. I got really good at misery. You go to medical school to sort of focus on what's wrong. If somebody has belly pain, you kind of try to come up with a diagnosis, you listen to their chief complaint, and you figure out what's wrong and you act on that, and then you hopefully send them on their way. In psychiatry, it's kind of the same idea. You just pinpoint and hone in on what's wrong, what are your symptoms, what's your chief complaint, and you try to lessen their stress, dial down their misery, decrease their symptoms, and send them on their way. And about 6 years ago, I was doing what I do best in treating misery. And one patient came in to see me who I'd been seeing for a few weeks. I thought we were making some progress. She was having some issues in her family life and with her kids, and she was just super stressed out. And we were working on strategies to help her reduce that. And one day she came into my office and said, "Dr. Boardman, I hate coming to our sessions. Even when everything is going well, all we do is talk about what's wrong. And it makes me feel worse. And you know what? I'm done." So she fired me. I mean, that was it, on the spot. And I, at the time, sort of tried to dismiss it, but it stuck with me because she was right. I had spent so much time focusing on what was wrong that I was not sort of considering what was strong. And also, could I help her find wellness within illness, find some strength within her stress? And so I ended up going back to school to get a degree in applied positive psychology. It's the opposite of everything I learned in medical school, which is truly the science of health and well-being.
How did you get to the point of going to medical school? What was the decision? Was it something that you were always passionate about?
Absolutely. I loved science, and I loved the humanities, and medicine was where the two collided. And I think I went initially sort of with starry eyes into how can I serve and help the world. And especially though in psychiatry, it's sort of, you funnel down into this much more narrow focus of how many milligrams should I prescribe? How can I sort of treat this illness? And I've really expanded now about how I think about physical health and mental health. And I think there is no health without mental health. And that's something that, as a positive psychiatrist, that I really focus on embodied health. What are the, as a psychiatrist, traditionally, you focus on what's going on in somebody's head, how their thinking is, their thinking processes are what matter. And I've really learned to expand the way I think also about the body. Traditionally in medical school and in psychiatry residency, we don't spend a lot of time asking how much physical activity somebody gets. We don't spend that much time about asking how much sleep somebody gets, unless it's a problem, then it comes up. And we don't, spend much time asking about the food they consume, unless it's an issue if they have an eating disorder. And understanding now how much your body actually affects how you feel has really shaped how I view, my patients too. And it's become such, a critical part of treatment is embodied health. how much time do they spend outdoors, you know, and I think most patients will also tell you they love, you know, they wish their therapist would discuss more with them ways they could get to the gym. So I literally prescribe that these days, and I think it's as valuable, if not more valuable, than medicine. And we see, I had a patient a while ago who he had always been a runner. He'd run marathons. He'd always been really, really active. And that was sort of part of his self-concept, his self-definition. He loved to run. And he had to have knee surgery. And he had come to see me because his wife was complaining, and he was too, he was just irritable. He was lethargic, really hard to get along with, and having a hard time. And it turned out he had had knee surgery about 4 months earlier, and he hadn't been active. And he had been, you know, a couch potato and not obviously getting his his typical amount of sort of getting his heart rate up and feeling strong. And it was clear to me that when he spoke about his early years, he said, well, I always liked, you know, when I was about 16 or 17, I started running, and it kind of cleared my head. And he felt that it also helped him concentrate. And from what I could tell, he had been self-medicating all these years with exercise. And suddenly it had been removed from his life. So I literally prescribed swimming. He started, you know, went into the pool. He was reluctant at first, not really making the connection. But after about a week or two of swimming, his wife was the one who noticed, like, this is so much better now. And I think he really was craving it. And for so long, he had used this tool of running. I mean, yes, it made him physically feel good, but it was also treating him, you know, his mental health, and was really critical for his mental health.
Is it possible to self-diagnose? Is it something that we can find in ourselves through the idea that we're not exercising, but there's something wrong? Or do we need to seek professional help when we're looking for that kind of thing?
You know, it's a great question, or way to think about it. If you're, you know, if you're feeling down, no matter what, physical activity will help you feel stronger. So, but I do think if you want to maybe explore it more, you're feeling that you need to talk to somebody, or you're feeling so down that it's really interrupting your life somehow, and disrupting your relationships, or you're unable to do the work you typically do, then I definitely recommend seeing somebody to you know, get a clearer diagnosis about how you feel, and also about what you can do. I think so much of psychiatry and psychology focuses on just what's going on in your head. And actually, we've really got to focus on what's going on in your body, because that, how your body's feeling, also then shapes how you experience the world, right? When you are feeling exhausted, or you're just, you know, you haven't moved around at all, you've taken 500 steps that day, and something irritates you, there's something, sort of some hassle, you're much more likely to turn that molehill into a mountain. You know, there's physical activity is performed, this sort of has a buffering effect, right? So it enables us to sort of feel strong. So in those moments of sort of a potential irritant, a potential hassle, doesn't have to become one. And I think we kind of create this scaffolding around us when we get that physical activity that our bodies crave. And, you know, we know even in schools and for students, and I think for adults as well, that kids who walk to school or physically get to school, if they skip to school or take a bike to school, are much less likely to have symptoms of ADHD, you know, as seen by their teachers. And that critical need to move their bodies. And I think that really also helps them focus and concentrate. And a lot of schools just say, like, oh, that's icing on the cake, that's not really that important. And it's vital, actually. And that we we're always sort of leapfrogging over that the value of exercise, of getting your heart rate up, and that it protects us and it facilitates, mental strength as well. So I'm, a big believer in kids walking to schools, and I know they're in some places in America they're doing walking school buses. And I always try to get my kids too to go through the park in the morning, and I'd rather wake up a little earlier to do that and make sure they skateboard to school or get some physical movement into their day. And they're also going to sleep better, they're going to perform better in school. And this isn't just for kids, it's for adults as well.
Is it all about getting the heart rate up? Is it because the other thing is, like, when you talk about that, is like getting in touch with nature as well for the mental health and getting outside. Is there a combination, or are we simply looking for heart rate?
I think we all have nature deficit disorder, that we do not spend enough time outdoors. And I think the average person spends less than 4 hours a week outside. And before you say, oh, not me, I bet I spend much more, when you sort of count up those hours, like, oh, okay, if you're in a car and out of the car, that we don't spend enough time in green space. And there's studies that show that just letting your eyes rest on a tree, it decreases rumination. And rumination is that ticker tape in our mind of, ongoing thoughts, self-criticism. Why did I do that? Why did I say that? And sort of that rehashing over and over and over again, that can be an on-ramp to depression. Being outdoors in a park, near a tree, that interrupts it. And it's really sort of forest bathing is the way the Japanese describe it. And it's a cure, I think, for nature deficit disorder. And so I do prescribe going to the park. And even better than going to the park by yourself is going with someone else. And there's studies that show that mothers and daughters who go to a park together, instead of going shopping together, will have sort of warmer feelings about each other. They're much less likely to argue for the following week than if they went to the mall. And even, looking at studies of physical interventions that help people feel mentally strong, it's typically playing soccer, tennis, doing something that's in tandem with somebody else. That, exercising alone is great. Exercising with someone else outdoors is even better.
Sorry, what was that? Because I've written this down. Physical interventions, and a friend of mine, Luke Stoltman, he's a strongman, and I feel like that's what he's done. But correct me if I'm wrong. So in the Scottish Highlands, they will he started going to cold water therapy. So he'd go jump in a lake or out in nature. And eventually that turned into groups of them doing it. And now they're all across Scotland, they're all doing it. And the change has been so amazing in just mental health alone. Is that a physical intervention? Is that a similar sort of thing?
Yes. And that is, that's music to my ears. And I think it's great when you're doing it by yourself, but when you're doing it with others, the benefits, multiply. And also, here's what's so valuable about that as well, is that there's accountability when there's a group. When you don't show up, and look, we all have days when we're like, oh, I don't feel like it. And if you're on your own, you might just skip it. But when you've got to sort of call up or say, oh, I'm not going to show up, or you're going to get 10 emails, like, where were you? That you're much more likely to show up. So that accountability part of it for any behavior change is really important. So we often have great intentions. Today I'm going to work out, I'm going to eat well, I'm going to go to sleep early, and I'm going to get all these things done. And by the end of the day, sometimes these things just don't happen. So one thing I'm really interested in is behavior change long term. How do we actually do the things that we want to do? Because short term, we're pretty good. We can, for a week, I'll do this, but then we really do it for 2 or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and like for the rest of your life. And so how do you close this intention action gap? And and you feel better when you do this. And one is by sort of asserting your values and really articulating them. I often ask patients, what are the 3 things you care about most? And a lot of people will say, my family, my friends, my health. And then you say, well, how did you spend last Saturday? What did you do all day in your free time? And oftentimes they'll be like, oh, I fell down a sort of Instagram hole and I ended up, oftentimes they don't spend their time, especially their leisure time, doing those things that they want to do. And when we close, like there's more overlap between what you value and the actions you take, you build resilience. And so the next thing I often ask them to do is what's called like a whoop exercise, WOOP. And you say, what is your wish? I wish I could get to the gym 4 times a week. It's to be specific about it. So that's your wish. Okay. Then the first O stands for, what would be the outcome of that? Well, the outcome would be, and you really want them to articulate what this is. I'd feel better. I think I would, I'd be proud of myself. I'd feel stronger. And I know physically I'd be healthier. Okay. Now the third, then the next letter is, the next O is, what's the obstacle? What gets in your way of doing that? I never leave my office on time, or I end up binge watching TV and I don't make it there. So then the P is, okay, what's your plan? You have to have a specific plan. Okay, I'm going to meet my friend Jordan at the gym at 5 o'clock on, Monday, and I'm going to get there. So when you have these WOOP, WOOP goals, it's wish, outcome, then obstacle, and plan. You're much more likely to follow through, to persevere, and to close that intention action gap.
I love it. I think people really work well with those kind of systems in place. Like, I feel like having that in place really works well. What is the importance specifically of physical health in regards to mental health? Like, where is how much does it carry over?
So, a great deal. And I think, my profession has just been saying like, oh, everything stops below the neck, right? Like, we're just treating what's going on in the head. And I was at a recent, I had to recertify every few years. And the lecturer is this well-known psychiatrist in America. And he's talking about all these new medications and interventions. And I raised my hand and I said, well, what about some of these lifestyle interventions? What about going to the gym, exercising more, being outside? And he sort of laughed it off and sort of dismissed it as something that was, why don't we let the trainers work on that, or we can let the social workers do that. And it really, to me, sort of embodied the mindset in a lot of mental health, is that that stuff is by the way, it's icing on the cake. It's not really our domain. It shouldn't matter that much. And we know that people who feel physically well feel more mentally well, and it protects them. And the people who say that they move more with friends have fewer mental health days each month. That means fewer days that they feel lethargic, that they have no energy, that they can't concentrate, that they don't feel like getting out of bed. And a lot also is about the food we eat. When they did this one intervention just for 4 days, asking somebody to eat the equivalent of a milkshake and a hamburger, and a huge cheeseburger and fries and kind of a greasy spoon breakfast, that they had a harder time concentrating. They were in a worse mood. They didn't sleep as well. And on top of that, their partner noticed that they were different. And so again, it is affecting even our relationships, and just eating, healthier food, more fruits and vegetables can increase your experience of vitality. And I think, it's not just, and certainly lockdown has shown us so much of our mental health is also about our support networks and how we get along with people, and that experience of felt love and feeling connected. And our relationships really suffer when we're neglecting those lifestyle interventions.
Yeah, I think as well is that I've noticed in particular with lockdown, that happened a lot. And I feel like it's highlighted it for a lot of people. Like a lot more people are noticing where their gaps are. They're seeing the issues. Just on the physical health for mental health, I've seen the frustration of, because the people we've interviewed, and including Luke Stoltman as well, they talk about these methods that they're using to help with their mental health, like the cold therapy and like a lot of breath work and stuff like that. And the frustration that it's not being used, and instead pills are being used and prescribed all the time. Yeah, it is really sad. Talking on a selfish level, if I was to have somebody who was wanting to get into business, or an entrepreneur, or someone who's trying to be a high achiever, what benefits does the physical exercise have for a person like that?
Immeasurable benefits. I think, that if you want to be at your peak performance in your mind, if you want your focus and your ability to concentrate and your ability to lead, your physical health is going to shape that and affect that. And it's also, your physical health is also going to shape your mental health. Like, here's an interesting study looking at people who were were EMTs. Those who had a stressful day, meaning there was a call that involved violence or a child, those who had supportive relationships and had like physical activity in their day were much more likely to be able to sleep well that night and then function better the next day. It buffers us, it protects us, it enables us to make good decisions, So I think for that sort of entrepreneurial spirit, that it's really valuable to anyone who, and to all of us who are trying to make good decisions every day. And here's this funny study from the University of Richmond. They were using rats, but there's application. I'll explain why in a second. Apparently, rats love Fruit Loops. It's like the delicacy of all time if you're a rat, and maybe if you're a person anyway. So some of the rats were, given this Fruit Loop. It was sort of buried under their bedding, and so they would have to go, and to get to this Fruit Loop, they would have to physically exert themselves. They would have to burrow through and scratch away, and it would take them a few minutes to get to their Fruit Loop. The other group of rats were just given the Fruit Loop. They got to sort of hang out, think of them as what she called trust fund rats. They were sort of handed the Fruit Loop on a silver platter. Then both groups of rats were challenged. They were put in a different context where they had to actually swim across something. Rats can swim, they don't like to that much. The rats who had to forage for the Fruit Loop, who were, had to work at it, who were physically more active, were much more likely to try and swim across this little pool. They also, when the Fruit Loop was put inside almost like a little cage that they had to go for, they tried about 70 times more than the rats who had just been handed the Fruit Loop. Like, when we're physically, working for something, it actually can make us more resilient.
Okay, so that's fantastic. Could you expand on that? The sort of idea that exercise and working towards something develops like a switch in mindset almost.
Absolutely. I think that, there's a long history though too of people who who have been in athletics in college, in high school, also, who are excellent leaders, who are much more likely to persevere when faced with an obstacle off the field. And I think what this rat study really embodies is how the idea of sort of, kicking your heels up and doing nothing, and that temptation to be a couch potato, we often think that that's how we're going to restore ourselves or replenish ourselves, or maybe that's how we need to, just by sort of sitting there, watching TV is going to be the best way to spend our free time. And yet, and I think all of us know this, we've all had a weekend where you just didn't really get out of bed much, and you maybe made it between your refrigerator and your bed or the sofa, and that was kind of the triangle you lived in, that by Monday morning, you feel awful. You actually feel worse and drained. But when you've done something, when you've stretched yourself in some way, physically or mentally, you feel replenished. Like, that is revitalizing. And I think that sense of vitality that you get from physical movement is essential, I think, to feeling physically and mentally strong. And like those, trust fund rats who just sat around and kind of drank, rat margaritas and were having a good time, that, maybe it was fine and great when the going was, when it was easy going and they were just handed their Fruit Loop. But when they were challenged, they fell apart. Like, they didn't have the wherewithal, they didn't have the experience of working for something, that they weren't able to persevere in the same way. And I think when we have those physical challenges and we push ourselves, we also have that amazing experience of what Mihai Csikszentmihalyi calls flow. Those experiences where we are just in the zone. And those are invaluable, right? Like, so when you feel you've lost time, you think, wait, I've been, lifting weights for 45 minutes. Where did the time go? That sense of just complete immersion, and you sort of forget about everything else around you. You're not ruminating, you're not thinking, but it's that wonderful combination of skill and challenge and where they collide. And those moments of flow, I think, we have fewer opportunities in our daily lives for them. We've got our phones and our devices that maybe we're checking all too often. And for flow, you need to just be in it, in the moment. You think of a swimmer, a marathon runner, somebody who's just in the zone, a musician even, where you're in that place where you're just focused on that one thing and you're not distracted. And it's really good for your brain. Like, that is revitalizing and restoring.
It's so funny you say that. We interviewed, I spoke to Cal Newport, who speaks about like flow and deep work just yesterday. And so in the offices right now, like, we've got areas, we've set them up so we can have that like sort of flow state. Do you feel that it's that the physical exercise, like having that flow in physical exercise, helps to carry it over into something like work or creating literature, or like you say, music? Does it help carry over? Does it have any carryover?
Absolutely. And you see people who have, who are usually, leaders in their field, whose expertise in one domain. We always hear of, oh, you've really got to focus, do one thing and do it right. But actually, when you see people who are true who achieve excellence, typically in multiple, in one domain, they have other interests, they have other hobbies. Like, I think most, there's an interesting study looking at Nobel Prize winners in the sciences, and they didn't just do biology. They also had these other domains where they excelled, that were interesting, that were hobbies. A few years ago, I asked somebody, a young woman I was interviewing, what are your hobbies? And she looked at me like I was, from another century, and said, like, what do I collect, stamps? And so I said, like, no, but what do you do outside of work? Because that, I think it's critical that you do things, if it's physical or if it's having other hobbies or other domains that actually illuminate the thing that you want to focus on. And it's something I've always encouraged in my patients as well, because I think it really does benefit their mental health, and it actually helps them excel in the domain that they want to. And it's, you know, when you, because it's usually those aha moments you don't have when you're focusing on the problem you want to solve. You have those aha moments in the shower. You know, you have those aha moments when you're, you know, in the gym, when you're not thinking about the thing you want to be thinking about.
Yeah, definitely do. You know, the person who you described as the person who sat on the sofa, maybe he's in that funk of the triangle between the toilet, the sofa, and the fridge. And how is there anything that they can do to sort of snap out of that? Like, are there exercises, or is there some sort of methodology that they can use to sort of break that mold? Because I know people who have been trapped there for like years almost, and it's like trying to get out of that is a difficult thing to do.
I think, you know, there's a lot of people often put a lot of, you know, energy into New Year's resolutions or, you know, things like that. But as we know, they don't always stick. But that said, when you want to make a behavior change, you know, you go through different stages of pre-contemplation, contemplation, planning, action. There's oftentimes relapse. So expecting setbacks is also part of it. And every day, you know, there's something called the fresh start effect. There's usually a little bit more momentum around people, like around a birthday, around New Year's, around sort of big, like significant, around turning like 30 or 40 or 50. There's usually there's a little more momentum there. But I think every Monday is also a fresh start opportunity for you. But so how can you sort of make it more likely? Number one, be accountable. I think that idea of doing something with a friend is invaluable. So you just sort of have to show up, and even if you're guilted into it, then you can often develop that intrinsic motivation afterwards. But there are, I think that also that you have to, what we call, like, if you think of a reaction, like a chemical reaction, how do you lower the activation energy of the thing that you want to do? How do you make it easier? Because behavior change, you know, you can look at motivation, but motivation comes and it goes. You know, I know in the morning I'm really motivated, by 5 o'clock, a little less so. So what you can do is make the thing you want to do easier. So whatever that is it putting your sneakers by the door? You know, is it having a gym bag packed before you leave your house? Is it, you know, is it you know, having some way that it feels a little bit less like a hill you've got to climb to do the thing you want to do? And I found whenever I can make something just a little bit more convenient for somebody to do it, they're much more likely to do it. Look, we're all pretty lazy, you know, in ways, and how do we, and we're creatures of habit. It is possible to change our habits, and we know that, but we always have to, like, replace the one we have with another one. Some people recommend, like, just really basic things, like, you know, if you brush your teeth every morning, couple that brushing your teeth with 30 push-ups. You know, so you do something that you know you have to, like, you know you're going to do anyway with that. And even if it's 10 push-ups, just those little changes can actually add up to a lot.
I've spoken before about, like, environment changes. So if you're trying to have a healthy diet, not having terrible foods in the house, and like you say, like, the shoes near the door are really, like, a really good one. Like, have your running shoes ready and your gear laid out. I mean, for yourself, is there any specific examples that you can think of?
Getting those M&Ms out of my desk drawer, you know, like those little things. A few years ago, Google, you know, had a problem. Their employees were just eating way too many M&Ms. And, that was one of the perks. You work there, you've got, this endless supply of M&Ms, but they thought, okay, this probably isn't so healthy. So they did something really clever. They didn't remove the M&Ms because there would have been a revolution, but they put the M&Ms, they took them out of this, clear container, and they put them in an opaque container on a shelf that was kind of hard to reach. And then they put the healthier snacks lower down, like at eye level, in attractive looking lucite containers. And it reduced M&M consumption by about 70%, I think. So all those interventions, when if you put in a buffet, in the cafeteria, for instance, if you put the higher sort of fat foods in the center bit, if you have like two, there's like the sneeze guard. Well, now in the age of COVID, I think buffets, I'm not sure if they will come back, but there's that center aisle of food that you have to like reach over a little bit more to get to. And then there's the stuff on each side that's pretty easy to reach. People are much less likely to take the food in the center, just reaching across. And so if you put like the higher fatty food there, you're much less likely, to reach for it. And so again, even, we often don't even consciously realize how much those little things affect our behavior. Like how if something's just easy, if a candy bowl's on my desk, I'm much more likely to eat from it than even if it's just, a few feet away from me. So that, it's called when we like select situations that you can also alter situations. Like if you get somewhere, like throw out the stuff you don't want to eat, because in a moment of weakness and when your motivation or self-control is a little bit lower, it's going to be much harder for you to resist that thing. And you know about the marshmallow study from the 1960s? It was these little kids, 4 and 5-year-olds, who were promised that a marshmallow that's sitting in front of them. And that this study. And so the kids were told, though, if you don't eat this marshmallow, when the researcher comes back in, you can have 2. And then they followed these kids for years and years and years. And the ones who were able to resist that first marshmallow so they could get 2 had better grades. They went on to have more stable relationships, less drug use, and they were much more likely to succeed. But the interesting part about this is that the ones who were able to resist eating the marshmallow and didn't just gobble it up, and I did this study with my kids using gummy bears, and of course they ate them, so I was not pleased, but the ones who had strategies, like the ones who turned their back on it or covered it with a napkin, or who started singing to themselves to distract themselves, those were the ones who were much less likely to do it. So look, we all have weaknesses in motivation, but I think having strategies and, planning ahead, deciding what you're going to, if you're going to a restaurant, and they've got something that you probably shouldn't eat, but you might think about it in advance. What are you going to order when you get there? Because sometimes we don't recognize how much someone else's behavior affects ours. If your friend orders that, fried, unhealthy dish, sometimes we just do what they're doing and we don't even realize. It just seems like the obvious thing to do. It's so easy to order whatever they're ordering. But I think if we're a little bit more deliberate about our health and our choices, we'll feel much better than just feeling like tumbleweeds being blown about and having choices made for us by others. And even on a menu, it's so much more appealing when there's a lovely description of grandma's, fried baked potato than, baked potato. So there are these little things that are sort of subtle changes that in our environment. There's a great guy called Dan Buettner. I don't know if you've ever spoken to him, who writes about the blue zones and places where people live longer and healthier. And he was trying to think about ways, like when people went shopping in grocery stores, they can be pretty good about choosing what they need and what's on their list. But by the time they reach the checkout counter, usually there's that gauntlet when you're like waiting online, and that's where all the candy is and all the sort of junk food is. But what about replacing that with fruit? Because that's when your self-control is probably bottoming out. And that's when you're just like, oh, I'm just going to buy that magazine I don't need, or, grab that candy bar I shouldn't be buying. But so there are these little things in our environment that make it easier to do the thing we want to do. Good lighting in neighborhoods, friendly parks, having wider sidewalks, that kind of environmental thing. Taking the stairs. My office is on the second floor of an office building, and it's right next door to this exercise studio as well. And there would be all these people coming to exercise, and they would wait for the elevator from the first floor to the second floor. And there's a staircase just right there. And it's so interesting, even, when people go to the gym, they'll wait sometimes to park as close as they can, to the gym, whereas just parking a little, bit further away is you'll have to walk a little longer, and that's a good thing.
So talking about that, and well, all the things in terms of implementation, how do we get to the point of self-awareness so we can start thinking about implementing these things?
Well, here's the thing that I always recommend is, after you just, even if you can get yourself to build a little bit more activity into your day, just in tomorrow, are you going to maybe park a little bit further away, get off the subway stop, or the tube a little further than from your one stop away from your destination, whatever. Or if you're going to go for a run, or if you're going to do yoga, or you're going to go to the gym, write down immediately afterwards how you feel. Because if you don't log it and sort of click it in some way in your mind, you'll probably the next day you'll be like, I don't feel like doing it. But it's really important to recognize how much better you feel. And there's a study done at Duke, and I think it was around 2007. People who were feeling, they had mild depression. Half the group was given an antidepressant. The other half they had to walk on a treadmill for 30 minutes. I think it was 4 times a week, low speed. And 6 weeks later, both groups felt less depressed. And 9 months later, the treadmill group was much less likely to have relapsed. So there's this protective effect of these activities. But, to sustain it, you've got to kind of have plans in place. You've got to be accountable, record how it makes you feel, because otherwise it's going to be really easy for that sort of to become, something that just doesn't happen. And I often have patients, and they live sometimes what I call as soon as lives. Like, oh, as soon as I get more time, or as soon as I'm able to do that thing, then I'm going to join a gym, or then I will. And, now is important. How are you going to do that now? And there's these little things that we can do too, that we know that just posture matters. How you sit matters. If somebody says to you, hey, lean forward and, walk a depressed walk, like, your shoulders are forward, your head's kind of down, you're looking at your phone, you're actually going to feel more depressed than if you actually walk with your shoulders back, you swing your arms, with a happy walk. Those types of just movements make us feel different. I had a patient who, before a deposition, she had worked at a law firm, and she would say I should go in the bathroom and should power pose beforehand, just like put her arms up in the air and just like in that victory sign. And it would help her feel sort of able to manage kind of whatever came her way. And I think there are all those like little changes, and you don't have to suddenly reinvent yourself, but you can make little changes that help you feel stronger.
I love it. It's just not easy. It's not an easy thing. It's going to be a long road, not a long road, but it's going to be something you have to work on constantly.
Yeah. And I think if there's any, we've engineered so much movement out of our lives, like it's just, we have these really sedentary lifestyles, and just basic, even, just what they call incidental ambulation, just even going from your desk, if you have an office job, to the kitchen, or walking around the block during lunch, like just adding more, incidental movement into your day. This isn't, you don't need the jog bra to, do incidental ambulation. You don't need to put on your gym clothes. Just moving more can be a good place to start.
So yeah, so just a good place to start. Move more. Anything? Do you prescribe anything in particular, like hit a certain amount of steps, or is there anything like that that you look at? Or
Sometimes I think it depends on who you are, because sometimes people will feel terrible, like, and demoralized, almost like, oh, I didn't reach my 10,000 steps, I feel like a failure, or or they get kind of obsessive about it and they want 20,000 steps too. So I'm I sort of see where the person is for that, and just whatever it is, do a little more than you did yesterday, for somebody who's really not moving much. And it might be, do you have a dog? Or is it walking your friend's dog? Is it, offering to do a favor for somebody, even if you're in the office, like, hey, I'll go to the coffee shop and do the coffee run or whatever, and I'm going to walk. Any opportunity you have to not get in your car, or not get on the subway or the tube. There was an interesting study they did. There was a tube strike in England a few years ago, and people who were forced then to experiment with how they got to work. So instead of their usual commute on the tube, they were forced to bike or walk or take a different way to work. And the fact, and afterwards, after the tube strike was over, they continued to do that. Which shows how behavior change is really interesting. Like, we get stuck in patterns. Like, why didn't they start that before? They were much happier with their walking or biking routes, and yet it took a forced experiment on them, like a tube strike, to nudge them to change their behavior. So, I mean, I even think in the wake of lockdown and how our lives have shifted, if there are any positive changes you've made, how do you carry them forward now? Yes, some people have developed some decidedly unhealthy habits, but how do we sustain those behaviors that maybe, if it was valuing your family and your friends more, or spending a little bit more time outdoors, or biking around more, what are the ways that we can sort of integrate that into our life, and so we don't relapse back to getting back on the metaphorical tube and just going back to how we were pre-COVID.
Yes, me personally, and I don't know the statistics, I might be wrong, but I feel like I've seen a lot more people trying to get in touch with nature, trying to connect with people, trying to exercise. So yeah, I mean, what is your advice for those people to hang on to that after the fact? Like, what should they be doing now?
So you don't want to have to wait for another lockdown or another, pandemic to go back to those moments of like, hey, wait, I want to sort of reevaluate and change my behaviors. So I think you've got to be intentional about what you're doing, so it's not just, so you are planning ahead and you are deliberate about it. Then the second thing you've got to do is be accountable about it. Like, have a meeting with yourself every Sunday. Like, did I do that stuff that I set out to do? Sometimes I advise people, like, in the morning when you wake up, how do you want to feel at the end of today? What do you want, like, your day to, like, if you were right now in the morning saying, what would you'd be describing your day at the end of it? How would you describe it? And I think you're much more likely then to follow through with those, those actions that you wanted to take. But it's really also, I think, acknowledging there's probably going to be some setbacks. It's going to be, I found a lot of people they were really excited to get back to socializing again. And then initially they sort of said yes to doing, to socializing and going to anything. And so, like, afterwards, they almost felt like they had this social hangover. It was so draining, and I think their social muscles had really atrophied. And lots of studies show that, the most meaningful interactions we have are having like a good conversation with somebody where you've learned something, where you've sort of stretched your soul a little bit. And the second one is where you have that experience of feeling understood and loved. And, so it might be now saying like no to that larger cocktail party or something, but just, making the most of those interactions and not just going back into the way things were, where you just were sort of on autopilot, and really prioritizing those behaviors that you want to integrate into your post-pandemic life.
Okay, that's fantastic. I don't know if this is something you could answer, because I know that the most people you speak to is probably different individuals, completely different people. But I bet you receive people telling you that they've got a lack of motivation. I hear that a lot I get messages about, I'm really struggling with lack of motivation. I feel like I can stay motivated. Is there a prescription that you give to them in terms of exercise, or is there something that you work through with those kinds of people?
Look, motivation is so hard to sustain. And I think sometimes, we hold people up all the time who, like, how motivated they are. And sometimes we don't see their struggles and how hard it is for them. And I'm always really appreciative of role models, of celebrities who actually share and talk about how unbelievably hard it is for them, and that I almost say they humanize themselves. And I think there's generosity in seeing that. But to sort of tap into motivation, I think in a sustained way, it's not, because the opposite of motivation sometimes is guilt, right? Like, so it's always like and guilt is a terrible, pond to swim in. So instead of saying I want to quit smoking, eat less, like doing less of something, I always try to encourage them, find something you actually enjoy and try to do more of that. You're much more likely to commit to it and to sustain it and to actually enjoy it, because it's pretty, for some people, meditation's amazing and they love it and it can be life-changing. For other people, it can be, it can make them anxious, and so if it's not working for you, find something that is a little bit more fun, a little bit more enjoyable, because you're much more likely to stick with a behavior that doesn't feel punishing. The other, another strategy that I've seen work with some people is when you actually couple something that you don't really like doing with something you really do like doing. So if you want to, it's called temptation bundling. So if you want to say, like, you really want to try to convince yourself to go to the gym a couple times a week or whatever, say, I'm only going to, I love your YouTube channel, and I'm only going to listen to Jordan when I'm at the gym. So you pair something that you really want to do with something that maybe you're a little less inclined to do, and you're much more likely then to sustain it too. I mean, I know people who would do it with TV shows and then say, okay, I can only watch this. I can only watch Game of Thrones while I'm on the treadmill. And it can be a good initial booster to get you into that habit of doing that thing you want to do.
So like tricking the mind a little bit. So then after that, you would develop a sort of, not a love, but you could enjoy the task a little bit more. So is that right? We are working with the mind to sort of trick it in a way.
Yes, I think sometimes just to get over that hump, or look, you might be doing that forevermore. Like you're only going to allow yourself to listen to that podcast, but to create a new habit or a new routine in some way, you've got to make it enjoyable. It can't be punishing. You cannot dread it. So that's where I say, like, you've got to make it easier. Do something, if you really don't want to swim and you dread the thought of getting into a cold pool in the morning, don't do that. go for a walk in the park instead. Find something that isn't as painful, because you're just much more likely to sustain it.
So how much more productive would someone be if they're doing the things they enjoy versus, I mean, so many of us, we do things we don't like just because we think that's what we're supposed to do.
Look, I mean, I think it's not like there's a lot of stuff in life that we have to do that maybe we don't want to do. And that, sometimes things are pretty stressful, and there's good stress too. And there's stuff that's not that enjoyable in the moment, but afterwards we're like, yes, I'm so glad that I did that thing. But I think it's going to be when there's a little bit of joy and fun in that thing you're doing. And I also think that's why the sports that are social in some way, that people are, not only are they happier, they're also more likely to live longer. If you play a team sport as an adult, or even you play tennis, or you play soccer, you do something that involves others, that you're just going to feel a lot better. It's going to be a lot more fun to show up. And I think you're much more likely to show up too, also because you just don't want to be a flake. I've got a friend I always go for walks with on Friday morning in Central Park, and I can't tell you how many mornings I just want to not do it. And, I just know that I don't want her to think I'm being a flake. So I'll show up, and then I'm so glad that I did it.
I love it. I feel like I could pick your brain all day, but where's the best, where's people, if they want to get resources from you and look for stuff and just more information?
Sure. I have, in the UK, I have a book coming out called Ready for Anything, and it comes out at the end of August. And you can find me at positiveprescription.com, and I am Samantha Boardman. So I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram, you can find me anywhere.
Is Ready for Anything, is that lined up with like what we was talking about in terms of coming out of this lockdown and just like trying to make sure that we are prepared?
Yes, 100%. In the US, it's called Everyday Vitality, though I gather there's a yogurt in the UK called Vitality. So they thought it wasn't a good title for over there. But it really is about that. And so much of it is about embodied health and the role of that mind, body, and body-mind connection. And those little tweaks and changes, I think so often people think they have to go away or, and eat, pray, love their way into health, or, transform their lives and lose 50 pounds, in this year, and stop smoking, or, just start running marathons. And it's really about the little everyday changes we can make in our physical and mental health to just feel like, we're ready for anything and feel stronger, and how we can stay strong within our everyday stress.
Right. Everything will be linked down below. So it's not in terms of the UK, would it be a pre-order to?
Yes.
Lovely. So I'll link it all below. I really, really appreciate your time. And I genuinely feel that these kind of conversations, and hopefully like I'll put something together that will just hit the message home a little bit more, but I think it definitely reaches more people. So I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Really, it was an honor. Thank you for having me.